Good evening and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union meeting. It's Wednesday, September 28th. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the August 24th minutes. A motion would be in order?
I had a few
Okay.
little typos.
Are they just grammatical?
Mostly.
Okay.
Except for page 5,
Okay.
where it says at the end of the first paragraph, Corey Valley was amenable to getting on board next year. I think you said that Corey Valley was amenable to discussing getting on board next year
What are we talking about?
about habits of work on page 5.
The last paragraph, the top paragraph.
I'm pretty sure you never said that you were okay about getting on board. I think you said that you were okay to discussing it.
Actually, the conversation was that high schools in Corey Valley are set.
And that was kind of said later on, but I don't think that wording was ever what happened. If you go to the top of
Oh,
page
it says
6,
that down here.
Yeah.
That Corey Valley 7 through 12 would keep their rubric and keep their habits of work and
Right.
keep everything as it has been.
So I think you were amenable to discussing the elementary part. I just didn't think that really reflected what you said on page 5. So, and it was kind of discussed later on. Even on top of page 6, it says there was continued discussion regarding Rutland Town, 7th and 8th. And then Lisa Miser confirmed that the building administrators, teachers feel they should follow the elementary level and that they want to be more unified and more consistent.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean, we're going with what they developed at the elementary level, and we're not changing the high school. And I think it says that. Did you see something you want to change, Mike, about that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that, the way it lays it out there in the,
Later on.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, and any grammatical errors or,
I'll hand it to Chris to get to
yes,
Chris.
that'll be great. Okay, so, a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Warrants, you receive warrants through your GRCSU email. All questions for warrants should be directed to Lewis. A motion would be in order to approve the warrants as presented.
So made.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We have superintendent and assistant superintendent reports in our packets. Is there anything you wanted to highlight, Chris?
The only thing I just wanted to highlight was the strategic plan. I know the information was sent out to all community members a week or so ago. And then our first design team meeting is next Monday at 5 o'clock at West Rutland. Information will be sent out again to families via school newsletters at the end of this week. We'll also be sending out just a reminder to all those board members, community members, parents, students, staff who have signed up for this, just about, just a reminder that Monday night at 5 o'clock at West Rutland we'll be meeting. So I just would encourage any board member to attend. I think it's a very interesting process, particularly as we're setting a vision for our SU and for our schools. So thanks.
Thank you. I didn't sign up, Chris, because
between both grandchildren. I can't guarantee I'm not going to miss meetings.
Yeah, there are, there'll be numerous opportunities for providing input, whether it be through, meetings, informal meetings, surveys, just even through board discussion. So you'll have an opportunity to give your input with that. So,
Okay,
all right.
thank you.
We'll get your input.
Oh, yeah, one way or the other.
There you go. All right. All right, we also have Lisa's report in the packet.
Nothing really to highlight for me other than just it's wonderful to have everybody back in school and be able to spend time with teachers and principals, working on teaching and learning and continuing to have that be our focus after the last few years is just refreshing and exciting. So then if anybody has any questions about my report, I'm happy to answer them. I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight.
Okay, we're gonna move right on to Bill.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying my time so far in the SU. It's been just wonderful to get out in the schools, which has been, obviously, we're focusing on building relationships. So I think I've put on 2,000 miles in the first 4 weeks of school and tried to get between each one. I'm finding the local eateries very nice as well to stop at lunch, which is good. But I've gotten a chance to observe a lot of our high need students to get a better idea of programming for them, which has been excellent. I think I've met every employee in special ed at this point. I think there's a few maybe I haven't, so I don't want to go too publicly with that, but it feels like I have. We've conducted meetings in person at every school over the week, so that is going real well. It's only been 4 weeks, so I don't have a lot of remarks tonight, but I would say overall things are very positive in the SU and special education.
Nice.
All right. Questions for Bill? All right, moving on to personnel. We have contract recommendations. In your packet, you have handouts, professional staff for Melissa Coffey for speech language pathologist long-term sub, and support staff Jennifer Dupree's Polteny Elementary para, Anna Montaz Proctor Elementary para, and Chelsea Loomis Ed Plan support work. Questions? Is Ed Plan support work something extra? Is that?
It's an hourly position, just, I think it was up to a certain amount of hours, which I'm not sure we'll utilize, but we're just shifting from Goalview, and we are going to a different platform.
Okay.
And it's just a lot of clerical work we're trying to take off the teachers right now so they can work with students. So she'll be entering IEPs into a system, so our teachers don't have to use up valuable class time to do that.
All right, a motion would be in order to approve professional staff and support staff as proposed.
Make a motion.
Motion by Tina. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Resignations, Patricia Swain, Middletown Springs, .5 special ed, Megan Watkins, Polteny Elementary para, Lauren Martell, Polteny Elementary para, retirements, Kathleen Crone, Polteny Elementary para, and Susan Ingalls, Central Office .38 Medicare clerk. A motion would be in order to approve the resignations and retirements.
So moved.
Discussion? Is Susan's position going to be wrapped into somebody else, Louis, or are you hiring?
Currently, my business office administrative assistant has been cross-training with her and is going to take over the work.
Okay,
And we're going to fund a portion of her position out of that Medicaid funds that we were using for Susan.
great.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Did you have a question for Louis?
No, I just
Oh,
said hi,
oh.
I didn't see him.
Oh. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. There's a handout in your packet for open positions, information only throughout the SU. Lewis, monthly report is in your packet. And FY24 budget. Are you looking for a discussion from us, Lewis, or questions?
So before we go into budget, there was also a request at the last meeting for some information on the summer programming, and that was included in the packet. So it was just the schools that ran programs, what the cost was that came out of ESSER funding, what the local cost was, and how many students were served in those programs. And I believe, let's see, there was a few different versions that I sent. Yep, so you have them for me. So it's just the amount of students that were served, the ESSER funding, local funding, and it was kind of both to give you some information on what happened this summer with the programs, but also looking forward if you want to continue these programs for the future, or similar programs, what that cost would be on local budgets once ESSER funds are gone.
Okay.
So it was just informational purposes. If there's any questions, I can take those on that.
So it seems like that's a good sheet for everyone to keep for budgets, and I would even bring it next meeting for the SU budget too, because we might be discussing some different kind of funding mechanisms. So I wouldn't recycle that.
Okay. So do you want me to have her include it again in next month's packet?
I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I can remember to bring it, but.
Yeah, well, I think we can, but there's a lot of people
Yeah,
missing.
yeah, probably. Yeah, she should send it out, just because there are a lot of people that aren't here.
Okay.
All right?
So how much time do you want me to spend tonight on budget?
We are not, we didn't plan to spend a lot of time on budget tonight because we have other things to discuss that we're gonna spend time on. So, I mean, is this just informational? Are you looking for,
So I know we had talked about in earlier meetings, moving the schedule up, and according to the timeline, tonight was the first draft review.
okay,
I can just do a 5-minute overview, and we can go into more details next month.
Are there more?
Are there
Did
more?
you
The
get
second
that?
one we ran out.
oh, did you get,
this mine?
Yep.
oh, here.
Okay.
Oh, wait, so I need one of those. I have two of those, sorry. Do you have this?
Yes, right here. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure.
Okay, so the first document looks like this, is just a presentation that we talked about.
Yep,
I know you're short for time tonight with the retreat and other agenda items, so I won't go through it in detail.
Okay.
But I just wanted to point out, so we had prepared this actually 2 years ago for the budget review, and at that time, we were also short on time. You wanted us to move the process along a little bit quicker, so we didn't present it.
that's just always our spiel with
So
you.
we have updated it based on what's happening now as compared to what was happening 2 years ago.
Yep.
But it's just some information on central office. Each administrator has a couple slides that goes over what's happening in their departments, as far as their staffing, how many staffing they have, what staffing does. We feel that there's maybe a lot of new board members and that they don't have a full understanding of what central office does. And so we just wanted to point out some of the work that does happen here with both the administrators at the administration level as well as the support staff level.
So
and
I
the
think
people
this would be
workforce.
good to do at the next meeting, and if we'll open and we'll be virtual at the next meeting, to share out with everyone then, and
Okay.
have you do that presentation then.
Okay.
That makes sense. Otherwise, it's kind of like doing it twice for us, and most of the people here probably don't need it as much, but I think it would be good to share out. And we'll probably have more teachers if we say we're gonna share it out too, I think.
Okay, so I'll plan on doing that as well.
Yeah,
So then on to the budget document, and I'll try to go through this quickly. So the budget is broken out into two main sections. There's the general fund and special education fund, and there's different assessment models for each one. The general fund is based on ADM, which is your average daily membership. So we take the total expense, or total net expense for the general fund, and we allocate that based on each district's ADM. And if you go to page 2, you can see the ADM for your district, and I provide the 3 years worth so that you can see how that's changed over the last 3 years. So each district pays a percentage based on their district's ADM compared to the full ADM for our SU. And then special ed is broken down by special IEP child count. So it's the number of students in each district that are on IEPs. And we use a lagging number for both models. So we're using last year's numbers for this year's budget, just because at the time that we're preparing this budget, we don't have that data. And rather than pushing this information out into the very end, but not knowing how it's going to affect your local budgets, we decided when we first merged that we were going to use the prior year's data so that we know what that data is when we start the budget process. The first page is the summary of changes. They're the major highlights that are affecting the budget. Page 3 and 4 are the general fund budget. Each department has its own section, so curriculum, executive administration, fiscal services, technology. Starting on, and I'll go over some of the highlights in a minute. Starting on page 5, you have the special ed budget, and that goes through page 8. Again, there's different sections based on the different, what we call the function. So instruction, SLP, OT, PT, each one is broken down by a different section. They have a different header and different subtotals, so you can see those, see that more clearly. It makes it easier to read. And then the final page is just some miscellaneous special ed data, which we will go over in a minute. So looking at the general fund, right now the budget is up by $17,000, which is less than 1%. This includes an estimate of the 10% increase in health insurance. We have not been given an estimate yet from VHI. We're hoping to get that sometime in October, maybe early November. So that 10% is worth $19,000. We do have an estimate rent increase built in. Our rent for this property, our lease for this property ends June 30th of this coming year. We are in the process of looking at what our options are for next year, both staying here as well as exploring other options in our communities. So hopefully we'll have more information on that as we go through the next few months. There is a reduction of 0.4 FTE in the business office staff, which is resulting in savings. And then I just want to, so over the last 3 years, the general fund for the SU has had an annual decrease in assessment of approximately 1% compared to an average expense increase in across all 3 districts of 3.32. So I just want, we are making sure that we are cognizant of our costs at central office, and I know the SU budget always gets a lot of focus and making sure that we're not increasing. But we have averaged a decrease over the last 3 years. Special ed budget is currently up by 4%, which is equal to $284,000. Of that 4%, or $284,000, $165,000 of it is decreasing the disallow amount estimates. So shifting over to Act 173, we're looking at different models. So in the past, we have pulled out special ed expense and we have billed that back to local districts because those are the amounts that we determined were ineligible for certain staff. Under Act 173, those models change a little bit, and so we're working on changing that. That has a net impact of 0. So we are increasing the special ed budget by $165,000, and you will see a reduction in special ed disallows that are billed back of $165,000. So the net impact is 0, but it is a shift, so I thought it was worth that pointing out. So that leaves a net increase in the special ed budget of $120,000, or 1.7%. A majority of the increase is due to health insurance and the teacher and ESP settlements that we had last year. We are FY24 is year 2 of the census block grant. So what that means is we were in a reimbursable model in the past, and now we are moving away from that. So in a reimbursable model, as our expense increases, so does our revenue. We got approximately 56% back in revenue for every dollar we spent. Now we're getting just a set amount. So if our cost increases, our amount that we get in revenue does not change. If our expense decreases, our block grant still remains the same. So we have to be extra cautious about when we're budgeting. That's just because if a new student moves in and that cost increase, we don't have any extra money to fund it, so that'll have an impact, and vice versa. So it could have an impact on budgets. This budget in front of you includes an 8.87 FTE reduction year over year, and you can see the details on that on page 9. We've broken it out based on the different types of positions and what we had in the FY23 budget versus the FY24 budget. Child count, pretty stable. It went down by 4 students. 10% increase in health insurance was approximately $87,000 of the $120,000 increase. And revenue is still pending. We're too early in the cycle. The information has not come out from the AOE to be able to provide that a reliable information on that. So I would just concentrate on looking at the expense at this time. So hopefully we'll have more information on that at the next meeting. Each budget, you can see at the end of each budget, you can see what your assessment was the prior year, what it is based on an estimate based on this budget in front of you, and what that impact will be. So remember, when you're looking at that, there's 2 things going on. Is what's happening with the budget, and then what's happening with your district's allocation. So even if the budget's flat, but your allocation changed up or down based on your ADM or your child count, you could see an increase and somebody else could see a decrease based on those changes in allocation. That was the high-level overview. If there's any questions, I'll take those now. Comments, feedback for next month, so that we make sure that we come back next month and we can have meaningful conversations. We want to make sure you have all the information that you want to see.
No, I think this is good baseline information for us to make ourselves familiar with before we come back in October for the conversations.
Okay.
Mike has a question for you.
Over the last 3 years, the decrease there, that's something we should probably highlight at town meeting when that time comes.
Yep. I know at town meeting we're mainly focused on the SU, or the district budgets, but I thought that was an important factor to highlight.
Yeah.
Show we're trying.
All right, thank you. And in total, we'll listen and we'll be engrossed by the slide presentation at the next meeting.
Yeah, I promise.
If you bring popcorn, we'll even be more.
Set up some music.
Sounds good.
I think it's important to do it. I think it's important
It
to
is.
do it periodically so people understand
Yeah.
how people are funded here and the position. So I just like to give you a hard time. Thank you very much. We appreciate the work, and I appreciate the summary of changes on the front page. That's quite helpful. All right, moving on to old business. In your packet, you have the GRCSU bylaws updated. The executive committee met, went through, made changes, and the changes should be highlighted with the strike through and then with the red changes. So we're looking for a motion this evening to approve the bylaws. Motion by Mike. Discussion.
I found a few little typos. It's like somewhat, when you cross stuff out, sometimes there was a word that wasn't crossed out and then you put the word back in. And then it was all grammatical. It was nothing
Okay.
substantial. I can give it to you.
All right, if you hand it to me, it was hard because I think the way she sent it and the way I sent it back, it didn't, it didn't move well. So, but as long as it's grammatical and doesn't change.
It's all grammatical.
Okay,
And I'll just circle the pages in blue where I added stuff. 'cause-
Sure, and I'll just take your copy and give to Christine then. All right, any other questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Eric?
Yes. Okay. So we have the VSBA resolutions. I'll be attending the VSBA annual conference and voting for the GRCSU. So there's not very many resolutions. The first one begins on page 5. The first two were withdrawn. And I'm not going to go through and read them all. Hopefully everyone read through them. But this one pertains to resolution number 3, remediation funds for PCB and radion contamination in schools. Basically saying that, advocating that the legislature allocate funds for remediation. And the VSBA's Resolutions Committee was a recommendation to pass as a regular resolution. Are there any questions on this resolution? All right, so basically I'd be looking for the board's direction on whether to vote to pass this resolution or not. And I don't know how you would like to do that, if we're just going to do a consensus or vote.
Well, do you want to go through all of them, and then maybe we could just make a vote on, we could vote on all of them, and then make a motion, and if there's discussion and someone doesn't want to vote
Yeah, we could.
yay on one of them, then that'll come out during discussion. Because there's only, what, 3? 4?
Yeah, 4 or 5 of them.
The next one is public funds.
Oh, I'm all one. No wonder it wasn't making sense.
Yes.
I wanted to read it. Okay.
I mean, if everyone's read through them, did anyone have concern about any of them, or? The VSBA's committee resolution was to say pass them all.
Yes, I believe the recommendation was to pass as continuing.
Yeah.
Well, some of them were, there is a difference between as a continuing resolution or a regular resolution.
So of resolution 3, 4, 5, and 6, is there consensus to direct Eric to vote yay for those resolutions?
I agree with that. I don't know if you want a motion or just a consensus.
We can just, the board can just direct him how, because he votes on our behalf.
Yep.
So any opposition to Eric voting yay?
One question.
Sure.
On proposal number 6, Eric. So that, I wouldn't oppose it, I just was wondering, source from, other than the education fund for the meals? Is that, can we have more specificity there, or that's just?
They're just saying that we should continue that,
So-
and they just don't want the money to come. I mean, in the committee,
Based on discussions that I've
Yeah.
been a part of and have heard, I think it's like, basically it's protection, like don't take away from the education fund. Like, that's the legislature's job, to find other funding sources, but not to just say, we'll just,
Right.
keep on dipping into the education fund and
Right.
depleting our sources. But if the legislators feel as important as we do, but it's their responsibility also to, find other funding sources besides just continuing to, take from this, so.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have a problem with that. It's an interesting way to word it, but yeah.
Yeah,
They could say that we have to provide universal meals, and
But then
then
you-
all of a
you
sudden
figure
say,
out, yeah.
figure out how to pay for it.
right.
So-
Well, and that's what they're trying to
I was gonna
protect
say, that's
from
what they're
happening.
saying now, right.
Yeah, and that's what the VSBA, that's what they're saying. So,
And I agree with all these resolutions to pass.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
so it seems like it's consensus for you to vote yes on all of those. And then on the last page is, those are more continuing resolutions. So they've already been passed, but they're still in process.
Yep.
So,
What's the Australian ballot? They deleted that. What was that proposal?
because during COVID, during that, like if people who voted from the floor, you had to vote by Australian ballot. So some places still vote from the floor for schools. I don't know who. But I'm sure there are. Probably places
Right.
like Timoth, maybe. Places, I don't know. I don't know if they do either, because they're part of. like-
Sandgate?
Yeah, okay. There are some, but they passed it last year that you had to, or the year before, you had to receive your ballot, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
So it was a whole big
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, we do. For our moderator, clerk, treasurer.
Right, but
Yep,
this
that's right.
was for the actual budget. You actually voted from the floor for that. Some towns still do
Oh.
that. So like before we merged, like you would have a town meeting and then a school meeting on the same night and you'd vote from the floor. So, but
Oh, wow.
like since we've merged, we don't do that anymore. But I think there might still be, as he said, Sandgate still does that. So apparently there's one.
There's at least one.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, there's a few.
So anyway, so they're not requiring you to do that, so they deleted that. All right. So it seems like it's consensus for yay on all those. Then, the next handout are the VSBA bylaws with the strike-throughs in blue and the, new verbiage in yellow. Any questions on those, concerns, or consensus to have Eric vote yes on the bylaw changes?
I didn't see anything I had a problem with.
Me neither.
A lot of the stuff was, we went over it at the last meeting, was clarifying and just kind of updating the language. I think the biggest portion probably was about the investments, I don't know what page that was on. Yeah, on page 2. So, all right, it looks like you're set to go, Eric.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
All right, policies. So second read for policies. F17, pupil privacy rights. F19, student distribution of non-school sponsored literature. F20, standard entry age kindergarten admission. F25, section 504, and ADA grievance protocol for students and staff. G6, complaints about instructional material. H3, advertising in schools, public solicitation, student fundraising. And H4, visits by parents, community members, or media, interviewing, filming, videotaping, or recording. H3, Quarry Valley, sent back to the policy committee, so I think we should probably remove that from the second read.
And F25, I think I spoke with Eric about this, that there was just a little grammar issue at the bottom, and I think you resent it with the period removed, but then the second page needs to be brought together, because it's part of the same sentence.
Oh, I see.
So it's a grammatical issue.
That one's
It's not-
grammatical.
It's not changing the context of
But, and then on G6,
Wait, you're back on F25.
Yep.
The second page be brought to the first page?
so, yeah, because the period was put there and it split up the sentence.
Yeah.
So you remove the period, but then it wasn't backspaced so that it was continued. It's,
See how the sentence is halfway through
It's
on
halfway.
the first page, and then,
Oh, I see what you mean.
yeah, it just needs to be a backspace probably, and then,
Well, it's done in PDF.
yeah.
It's not.
it's more complicated than that, but in any case,
Just by removing that period, it just removed. the
right, so
period.
that's what I'm saying, I think
So you just want that sentence
should be
to
brought
up.
together, yeah.
Okay. I can-
And then on G6, I still think, and I believe the Rutland Town Board agreed too, that 4 and 5 should be switched in order. Because 5 talks about the form that is given if the complaint's not handled informally. And then 4 talks about how that completed form is already turned in. So 4 and 5 should just be switched in order.
Yeah, no, I got those. I got all those changes.
But we didn't get them in our packets. So you get the changes, but then we're voting tonight on if it's ready to go and be posted, right?
Well, I mean,
So-
as far as like the grammar and stuff like that, like for this F25, but I mean, it might be, I don't know, it might seem fine to just switch those sentences, but I don't feel I could just do that without taking it back to
Which is
the
why that-
policy committee.
Right, so that's why I gave it back
Yeah.
to Jeff to give to you. So then we shouldn't receive it here if the policy committee still has to
Right.
at it
Well, my
again.
concern is that, we're just talking that this policy it hasn't changed. And so it doesn't affect how the policy is implemented either, just even by switching those lines. And so, the policy committee has an hour and a half, that we meet. And, if it did something to improve the policy, here we are, we're doing these second reads and we should be adopting them. We saw the first reads back in June.
But I corrected it back in June.
I never got those changes. I didn't get any
Yeah.
changes until a few weeks ago.
I think the objection here is that this is a procedure.
Right.
And so if it's a procedural thing, 5 should come before 4. So technically, yes, it doesn't change anything, but if somebody looks at it and says, what are the procedural steps? At least that's the way I look at it. It would be that 5 should come before 4. But we're not changing the context.
Yeah, we're not changing the context, it's just that it's not in the right procedural order.
Right.
If that matters.
Well, and, that's my point I was getting at. If, you wanted to, adopt this policy with those changes, a motion could be made to do that,
Well, I would be happy to do that.
so, I think
Okay,
that would be
and we
fine.
can do that because that's not changing the context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
It
changing.
just should be correct, the way we want it posted
Yeah.
when we agree on
And
it.
I know like some of the policies are coming through and they haven't been changed. I think the problem is though that everyone's more aware of the policies now and more people are reading them. And unfortunately, in past administrations before Chris, when policies were being reviewed and like that, it was only a small group and sometimes it didn't even have board members, it was just administration. And so I know, because I still have my old notebook that has policy in it.
10 years.
Because I went through and read something and I was like, this is the craziest thing in this policy. And that's the way we had approved the policy
Right.
before. But when we were approving policies prior, we approved the entire notebook of policies.
I didn't think we'd ever get through it.
Right.
It was just, oh.
And so there are things, and I mean, not to be dismissive of the policy committee, but there are things that were and have been approved that do need to be cleaned up, even though the policy still is this, coming to us in the same form that it was in the book. You know what I
Right,
mean?
oh, yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
fine.
okay.
The only thing I'm saying is that the process that we have is very inclusive, and it's a long process.
Yeah.
And the first step should be that when the policy agenda goes out and you see those policies, or I know the policies aren't going out, it's just the agenda itself. I mean, that should be the first step where people should be reviewing those
Yeah,
policies.
but
that
some
are
people
coming out.
don't have the policies unless they come in the packet, because nobody has a book unless you were on the board prior.
Right, well, you know.
So, and maybe we talked about this before, and Tina had suggested this because it did say this. Maybe the policy committee should send it to us, to the SU board, and then we send it out to our local boards, and then we come back at the next meeting and adopt it. Because sometimes it feels like a lot of changes are still coming at this level after they've already been out, right? So, I don't know. It's just a suggestion. Because I know, like, we've talked about this before, and there's a level of frustration with the same policies going back.
Yeah.
So, and maybe there's a better conversation to have here before we send it to our local boards. Like if Tina, or if I'm the only one that sees a problem with that, we can talk about it and see what that is. Then when they go to their local boards, they can say, oh, well, Quarry Valley thought we should strike 1 and 2 and do this.
I'm just wondering, in the process that we have now,
Yeah.
and it probably is Rutland Town's fault, would you prefer us to send changes directly to you?
Yeah.
We assumed by
Yeah.
giving them to someone else they were going to you, but if you're not getting them in time,
Oh, they are, and, you know, because I've had, you know, a lot of board members, actually a few board members email me directly. So that's fine if you send them to me.
okay, and that way we can make sure that,
And,
God
you know,
forbid, someone's sick or something and the note doesn't get handed off.
The policy committee works out of a Google Drive. So those materials too, you know, could be sent out with just a simple link, you know, where, you know, maybe that's something so that people can see, board members can see if they take the time. And this is stuff that's coming to the committee first,
Yeah.
you know, so the policies that we review and then we send out for first reads like this month, in October and so on. So I feel that might help keep from seeing second reads go back. Because, you know, what happens is like, well, Well Springs might adopt all of them, and then other boards don't.
Yeah.
And not like it's a big deal, you know, that the policy's still in place, but what it means is that process starts all over again. So then it goes back to committee, and then we're doing it again.
Right.
But I definitely appreciate all the feedback and any of the feedback, because, you know, there's things that I myself don't see that other people do. And that's why I say it's a very inclusive process, and, you know, the more we streamline it, the better.
Yeah.
But, you know, like as far as like some of these corrections, if I had, you know, 4 or 5 different people asking me to make a change, I don't feel it's appropriate that I just make that change just because too. So at some point, you know, depending on what it is, it should go back to the committee to say,
Right, but I think
you know what I
even
mean?
like with Tina's change, obviously they discussed that in Rutland Town, right? So and they sent that. It's not changing the policy. So I think it's okay for us tonight to accept it with the amendment to switch 4 and 5. I don't think this policy
Yeah, no,
needs to
I'm
go
fine with
back
that
to.
too. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's,
and if there's something that's grammatical, like spacing or things like that, I don't think that needs to go back. The policy we sent back from Corey Valley H3 was just because it just didn't address what the policy said it addressed. So,
I think Eric's argument is when it comes here, he's looking for finalization.
Right.
This is what he's
Right,
hoping
on the
for,
second reads,
that it's
right.
all ready to go.
right.
But that's his
Yeah.
concern, I would say.
Well, I think, so tonight we'll approve everything except H3.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
With the changes to G6.
Right, that we approve
And
the
F25,
si-
just a grammar change.
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
the
yeah, it is.
the spacing formatting.
Right, that's minor. So I make a motion that we approve the second read policies, some of them as amended.
Okay. So F25, G6 as amended, and H3 is back in policy. Any discussion?
no, I did want to ask though too, that's something I wasn't sure about. So those changes that you sent me and then like the changes you sent me, those were done like at the board level, right?
Right.
You that wasn't just you reviewing them and just saying.
No, it's at the board.
Those are,
Yep.
okay. That's something I didn't know.
Yep.
You know, all right.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, first read policies. B2, board goal setting and evaluation. D1, personnel recruitment, selection, appointment, and criminal records check. F2, search, seizure, and interrogation of students by school personnel. F10, 18-year-old students. G1, curriculum development and coordination. G3, student trips. G4, selection of library materials. G5, selection of instructional materials. G11, excuse me, animal dissection. G13, Title I comparability. H2, community use of school facilities. And I would question having H2 on there. Have the updates from the attorney been incorporated in that? So that should just be taken off there
Well,
too.
I said to leave all of them on there just for, as far as like any additional input. So that's
Okay.
why these first reads are still on there,
Okay,
even though I've
so-
already gotten.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
can make that change.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's gonna go back,
Okay, yeah.
to policy.
So when it comes to the school, the individual schools, it'll have those, the lawyer changes or those changes before.
Yeah,
for
they
first-
should.
No, it's gonna go back to the committee.
Okay,
Because
but I'm
they
just
ha-
saying, when they come out to the schools, it'll have those changes in it, right? For
that
first read?
upgrade, that update will be made from the attorney when it comes for a second read.
I don't know, whatever the committee decides, I guess.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, I got that information and, you know,
Yeah.
when we discuss it, we'll have all
Okay.
that there and any suggestion of changes, so.
Okay.
So Eric, at our board meeting, it was mostly me that mentioned it, but it was approved by the board, to correct some things. So, one was on D1, on selection number 1. We discussed that the cost of the background checks will be borne by either the prospective employee or the school district, but the way, and it was, Chris had told us that it kind of depends on the position, whether the employee pays for it or the school district, but that it's not clear in this, on this policy, how, that's what happens. It's like either or you pick, but it doesn't say, will be determined by the position or something like that. So we sent that one back. So for example, because we sent it back, it's like, why is it here tonight?
For any additional further input.
But it's listed as,
So all it says,
No,
so
that's
Okay.
first
all,
read.
it has to go through the process for all the boards. So even though a board sends it back, all boards have an opportunity to respond to this. So in order for us to make the changes and then have, yes, you would kind of
Okay.
change that process a little bit. So it is a little bit, I think that's also why some of you discussed, well, maybe, the shift moving forward about having the SU first and have local boards to avoid confusion. But I think with this process, the way that Eric and Queenie have been doing is like, Christine sends it out to all boards as it comes back. All boards are still seeing the same document, so it wouldn't be like a Wellspring, just by luck, if they're
Right.
going next week, and then 3 weeks later, GRCSU would be looking at something different than Wellsprings looked at.
So then, did you get that feedback on this? Okay. So then did you also get the feedback on F2?
That's first read too. Search
Right.
and seizure.
Oh, yeah, the search and seizure, yeah.
So those updates or changes should come in the
Second read.
second read.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
So I guess the only concern I have is if boards send it back, then it still seems like with changes, that it still seems like it's the committee's decision whether
On
they're
whether it's changed.
accepting
Right,
boards' updates or changes.
right.
yep, that's exactly right. So, I mean,
And so I think that's sometimes where the issue comes in.
well, that's why we have a committee.
But the committee is supposed to work for the GRCSU board. And
Right.
the GRCSU board is the
Final.
one that makes the final choices,
Okay.
right?
Well, I'm just saying, so it sounds
way I
like to
look at
me.
it.
Recommendation from the. it's a
From the
recommendation
policy
from
committee.
the policy committee to the GRCSU board. This is what we're recommending.
Yeah.
We ratify that.
This is the committee's recommendation. And, in the past, where we've had, suggestions of changes, we just take a look at them. Oh, that's a good change, all right, and accept it and move on. So
Some of the confusion.
that's
some
my
of the-
understanding
right.
on how this process.
Well, so
is going
I
to work.
just want to be clear, because what could happen is their changes could have been sent to you. But when we come back in October, those changes might not be incorporated because the committee might say they didn't
No,
want.
right, and I think that's where the confusion
Right.
is like Tina expects to see the change, well, the committee might have said, no, we're not
Yeah.
gonna do that.
Well,
So,
yeah, and so,
So that, I think that's
Right.
a bit of the problem. So that's why I wonder if maybe it's not better, then we switch and we start here. Because if the SU board collectively says that change should be made, then the change should be made.
Which
Because,
is the way that it reads that we're
right,
supposed to
because
do
the
it.
SU board is the one that is technically setting policy.
yeah, I mean, boards, I asked the VSBA about this too, because I thought we were doing this process wrong. I thought policy should be developed, at the SU and then go
Yep.
down. But actually, I was told, no, actually, there's no law saying how you
Right.
implement policy. So the method that we're doing this is perfectly fine.
Except
But
that
if we-
it's confusing and it,
Well, I just think,
Well,
I think that's.
I don't think it's confusing, because these policies that are going, for these changes tonight, they're going back to committee, so that the committee will look at them in October, and then you're gonna see first reads again in November.
Okay.
And then when you see those first reads, if,
If the
those
changes.
changes should be there.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see any reason why.
Okay, I think that's part of where Tina's frustration is coming in, that sometimes changes are sent, and then when they come back to us, there haven't been any changes made.
So for-
Even when it comes
yeah.
for a second read. So all I'm saying is to cut off like the frustration on your level that policies keep getting sent back because there needs to be a change. I just want to
No.
streamline that.
My only issue is when they get sent back when, when they're supposed to be adopted. And it just basically tells me that they just weren't read to begin with,
Well, see,
That's the way I see it.
that's where I disagree, because I feel like I made that correction on the first read originally, and now it's back as a second read with the same mistakes.
Yeah, I never got, if you're talking specifically like on that G6 or whichever one it was, that's a simple change.
He said he received it.
Okay, I just wanted to be a little more streamlined, so people aren't on both sides, people sending, and then you're like, we're getting the same policies back all the time, so we see some momentum kind of moving forward, so. We'll wait till October, we'll see how it goes, and we'll re-examine it then. How's that sound?
I thought everyone understood the process. I mean, with this, committee and then first read, then second read, it's like a 3-month process.
Yeah, I think people do. I just think that we've had a few times when policies have come back for second reads, and there have been changes sent from boards, and there haven't been any changes made. And I think that's where the, confusion or,
I know that was the case like back in like March and April. And, working with Christine and Superintendent, we've come up with a method that I think has worked a lot better
okay,
to make sure those don't happen. And
okay, that's
So.
good. All right, I just wanted to be a smoother process. So it is 7:02, and we are going to take a break, and we are then going to go into executive session.